Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Campus Consortium's EdTalks webinar series. Our presenters for today's session are Tom Woods, Google for Education Training Lead at Amplified IT, and Dr. Carl Horvath, President at Campus Consortium. We will take questions at the end of today's presentation. Please enter the question into the chat box or questions pane in your Zoom control panel. Without further ado, please allow me to present Tom Woods and Dr. Carl Horvath. Over to you, Carl.
Thank you, Lily. Much appreciated. And welcome to everyone and our special guest today, Tom Woods. And we're going to do a few things a little bit differently than normally do. But first, I wanted to kind of give a shout out to a few folks here that are attending, just to give everybody an idea who's here today. We have Richard from Taft University. We have Richard Wack from Villanova University. We have Professor and Graduate Director Lorlia from Marist College. We have Harriet from Xavier University, who's the IT Director, Director of Academic Partnerships from Franklin College, Betsy, and Dean of Academic Affairs, Hermencia from Dominica State College, Professor from Illinois State University, Rosie, and we have President of the University of Management and Technology with us today, Registrar from Lorain Community College, Lorain County Community College, and we also have Columbia State Community College, Maria, who's Director of Academic Engagement. We have the Registrar from the University of Fiji with us today, and Vice President for Student Affairs from Southeastern Technical College, Barry. Also have the Director of Technology at Miami-Dade College, Deborah. So, and we have the Registrar from Gratz College. So a lot of different people from all over the campus attending today's presentation. We also have some organizations. Looks like we have Shannon from Internet 2 with us today. So appreciate you attending and everyone with us today. Let's move on to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be discussing today. We're basically going to be discussing Google Workspace for Education, secure collaboration in higher ed with Google. And we already talked a little bit about Tom Woods, who will be talking with us more about that today. Next slide, please. So today's presentation is Campus Consortium EdTalk, and a little bit about campus. Started in 2003. We service and support educational technology for K through 12 and higher education. There's many members from K through 12 and higher ed of Campus Consortium. And our mission is to help reduce the time, cost, and effort associated with implementing and acquiring enterprise IT services. More now than ever before, enterprise IT is important for all kinds of institutions. We also provide lessons learned, some research and best practices and collaboration between our members. Next slide, please. Also like to give special thanks to our sponsors today, Google for Education and Amplified IT. And you'll be learning a lot more about Google for Education and how it can work on your campus. Just wanted to kind of touch on the different approach we're taking today to the Ed Talk. We want to take a deep dive into this set of tools that helps with academics and administration of institutions. Since the pandemic, the emphasis on providing online learning and a mobile workforce left schools with no option other than to depend on the tools they had at hand. So many small to medium institutions just didn't have the resources to make a pivot from a primarily on-ground student experience to an online student experience. Suddenly, all of education depended on technology, and some were better to provide online instruction and services than others. Still today, as enrollment, finances, and staffing are continuing challenges for many, schools must find tools for the long term since the pandemic has influenced dependency on remote work and interaction. So today, we're going to take a deep dive review of a set of tools that address something for everyone in education: academics, student services, information technology, security and protection, meeting and collaboration. These tools address a lot of these services in a cloud-based system. These tools are provided by well-known and innovative tech giant Google. Google is a multinational technology company that specializes in internet-related services and products like search engines, as you probably all well know, cloud computing, software, hardware, and it's considered one of the big 5 tech companies, along with Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. Google's investment in infrastructure on a mass scale and volume of users bring affordable technology to institutions and organizations with minimal budget and resources, allowing them to implement user-friendly, budget-friendly, and secure state-of-the-art technology to thrive in this competitive sector. And it's really gotten very difficult, especially since the pandemic. And of course, there's impacts that continue past the recovery from the pandemic that we all have to address. So next slide, please. I'd like to introduce, so Google for Education and Amplified IT are our sponsors today, and we will be learning more about Google for Education. By the way, the presentation after we're done will be available in the chat in a bit.ly URL. It'll also be posted on the Campus Consortium website. Next slide, please. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Tom Woods. We'll be going through Google for Education, so you get a view. As I said, there's something for everybody in here, so you can see how it can be used in teaching and learning, how it can be used for collaboration of your workforce and your staff, and also how it can be easily administrated by those in IT or in other areas who would be responsible. Tom Woods is a Google Cloud Certified Administrator, and he's a Certified Deployment Specialist, an Amplified Admin with over 26 years in IT and 20 years in educational technology. Tom brings unique insights into the planning, implementation, and support of Google for Education. Amplified IT is an education-focused Google for Education technical consultancy company based in Virginia. And they work throughout North America with schools, school districts, and educational institutions ranging in size from a few hundred students to over 500,000 students. Amplified IT works with schools, school districts, higher ed, and the Google EDU team to create best practices for the deployment of Google for Education. Amplified IT empowers school IT staff through tools and services like their GFE Audit, GFE Kickstart, and Amplified Lab tools. And so I'm going to hand it over to Tom as we go through the presentation today. Also, I really want to encourage the attendees to participate. We'll have 3 poll questions as we move through this presentation, so please participate. Be a quick poll question for 30 seconds. Please answer. We'll pop the results up on the screen. So we really want this to be an interactive presentation. And so, Tom, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. Very, very happy to be here today. And we've hopefully got, like Carl said, a lot of great deep dive information for you, rather than just kind of talking about some of the banner features of some of the products here. We're going to get right down into the security and privacy and collaboration features that really matter for you with the use of Google for Education. And thanks. And if you're not familiar, as Carl said, Amplified IT, we're in general terms a technical consultancy company. We like to work shoulder to shoulder with the IT staff, the stakeholders, the folks that use Google for Education, work with them around the best practices, how to implement those, how to make sure that they're utilizing the platform and the features to the best of their ability to support great student success, and obviously the idea of security, privacy, and making sure things are being used effectively and appropriately is a big part of that. So we've worked with a lot of higher ed institutions, along with, of course, a lot of K-12 institutions in the US and Canada and North America. And like we said there, everything independent organizations all the way up to a lot of the biggest K-12 districts and higher ed institutions in North America. So we work really, really closely with the Google team. We're a premier partner of Google's, and they are part of this presentation with us today. And we're going to have an engineer from the Google team on to help with any of the questions towards the end, if there's any questions there that they can help with as well. So we've got them here as well to support you guys during this session, and we're going to get rolling here. So secure collaboration in higher education with Google, there's a lot to that. We could definitely have a 3 to 4 hour presentation if we wanted to really peel back the layers on that. But what we're going to focus on today is what versions are available. What does the suite look like? There's some recent changes back at the beginning of this year in how this is offered to educational institutions, and there are some different choices. So we're going to go through those, take a look at what they mean to you, how you can leverage and utilize those features, which version makes the most sense, what's going to be the most cost effective for you potentially if you're looking at one of the alternative paid versions, and we'll get some hands-on demonstrations even of some of the tools as well. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to go through the education landscape. This is just, taking a step back, taking a deep breath, looking at the last year and a half, which has been quite the year for sure, as everyone is more than intimately familiar with. And that's changed a lot of things, and that's changed a lot of outlook from Google's perspective on how they want to provide these tools to you. And it's changed the needs and requirements and the 1 to 3 year planning of a lot of institutions like yourselves. And there has to be some fairly significant pivots happen, especially last year as well. We'll go through just in general the Google security and privacy commitments and what they do and how they do it to provide these kind of solutions to you, where everything with the problems last year with the pandemic created that real shift in an approach from an IT perspective, from a security perspective. We'll take a real deep look into the enhanced collaboration tools that the suites can provide and the security features and abilities within that. And we'll make sure at the end that Carl and I leave some time for some Q&A. We do, for sure, like we said, encourage you to ask those questions in the chat as we go along here. We'll try to keep an eye on that. If we can answer some things as we go, we'll try to do that, but we'll make sure we have that time at the end dedicated to Q&A as well. All right, so the education landscape, we're just going to go through some interesting pieces here, and you may have seen these in various websites and various articles and things like that, but some key points, to really take a look at here. And this is all, very fresh stuff in the last 1 to 2 years for sure. With all that pivoting last year, with remote learning due to the pandemic, it doesn't matter what type of education you're in, there was a need to move there and really upset the apple cart a bit and having to be forced into doing things a little bit differently. We know a lot of instructors that were polled in this America's Great Remote Learning Experiment survey. They really felt like their students were less engaged. 3/4 of the instructors that were part of that poll felt their students were less engaged than when they're physically in the classroom or in the lecture hall with them. So that's a real important statistic there. It's new, like anything else new. We're not going to be fantastic at it the first time around, but if this is going to be part of the, I hate to use the term the new normal because that way too much, but if we're going to continue to have an element of remote learning in order to accommodate and facilitate some of the needs going forward in our worlds here, then we definitely have to improve that number. That can't stay the way it is. A lot of cyber attacks affecting education institutions last year. We know there's been a really, really large increase for sure. We know a lot of that comes from the educational sector. There's probably about 70+% of the cyber attacks that we're seeing were targeted at the educational institutions. On the rise and surpassing a lot of other areas. So you folks were a target. K-12 is a target, higher ed, any educational institution seems to be a target. And then some of the other statistics here, might even tell the story why. 1,327, really this is just telling the tale of the scramble that had to happen in the last year, and last year in 2020, the average each month of educational tools that had to be looked at, that had to be assessed, were staggering. Schools were having to, in educational institutions, look at new tools, look at Meet, look at Zoom, look at other pieces to do with security, with providing VPNs they never had to provide before, everything in between. So there was a real scramble, as we said, to try to evaluate tools as quickly as possible, make some decisions. We know some tools had security issues that kind of boiled to the surface because they, as a company, weren't ready for the kind of capacity and the kind of load that was going to be put upon them by all these institutions suddenly needing to leverage these kind of tools. Down in the bottom corner, 24 million plus sensitive records have been affected, data breaches, things being stolen by infiltrators. That's a big number. And what I found interesting looking at that article was obviously there are phishing attacks and things like that, but almost 30% of those record breaches were due to user error or user disclosure, people mistakenly putting attachments into emails, mistakenly emailing those attachments to the wrong people, to external people, possibly sharing something, anyone with the link in the world on the internet can view this. Lack of education on how to secure that data, how to share that data properly internally. 30% is a big number, and you can buy all the EdTech software and tools and pieces of hardware in your firewall and data center that you want, but humans are humans, and people are going to continue, if improperly educated, to make mistakes like that, and that's a fairly large number. EDUCAUSE has an article here on the top IT issues from earlier this year for 2021, kind of post-pandemic, and information security, surprisingly, is just number 5, and it's not higher than that. Arguably, you would hope and want to see, given a lot of these other statistics, that it should be higher than that, but it was number 5 on the list behind a lot of other pieces there. So that's a great article. All these links are here at the bottom of the slide. If you want to take a look at those later, you can go through some of those articles. There's some great information there. And as we said, higher education especially seems to be a target. We've got everything from the Accellion breach that happened to quite a few folks out there earlier, to EDUCAUSE's report on privacy and security in higher ed. There's some interesting statistics in these articles. One that really jumped out to almost half, a little over half, 55% of educators, your professors, your teachers, your instructors, were absolutely unfamiliar with what the term ransomware is or means. They look for something. How can you protect yourself and make the right decisions on, not mistakenly getting caught up in something like that, opening the wrong attachment, if you're not even aware of what that problem is? So that was a bit of a startling statistic. And again, speaks a lot to that education piece for our staff, for our educators. Colleges being closed down due to major attacks, being big targets for extortion. A lot of the times we see these ransoms being paid, tens of thousands, millions of, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars being paid out in ransoms. And the new game is not just to ransom you for an amount to release and de-encrypt your data, but then in a lot of cases, a secondary ransom that needs to be paid in order to have those attackers not publish your data publicly online. So now they're trying to double dip on that and really get you in both directions there. So a lot of problems there with that. Again, some of it's a people issue, but also if we have tools like what we're going to look at today, stopping phishing, stopping those malicious attachments that could have ransomware, that could have malware and spyware in them, can be a big piece of that. And we've got some things to show you today that can really help. All right, so we're going to jump into our first poll question. I'll turn this back to you, Carl.
Thank you, Tom. Interesting. Yes, as a CIO, I definitely in the past dealt with a lot of those issues that you're talking about. Quick poll question for the attendees, please. Are you currently using Google Workspace for Education, formerly G Suite, at your institution? Yes, we do. Fundamentals, formerly known as G Suite. Yes, we use Workspace for Education Standard, which is a different version. And then a third, yes, we use Google Workspace for Education Plus, that's a different version, or no, just here to learn more. Reason we want to get an idea of the audience in terms of how we will proceed with the presentation. You know, if there's a lot of people that are currently using Workspace, then that would be good for Tom to know as we get into the rest of the presentation. Quick poll, if you could just answer that in the next 30 seconds, we'll review and go to the next section. But Tom, you were talking about the security issues. So IT security in higher ed is major issue, and it's been growing. Although a lot of institutions are sometimes not ready for that because they don't have the resources or the funds to really address it on a daily basis. As the threats continue to increase, you really have to strengthen your tools. Is that what you're seeing in the schools that you're working with?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I think for sure we've seen a trend and a real shift to really trying to utilize what's available in the tools, and I think try to consolidate. I know sometimes in the past for a lot of institutions, you know, it was a bit of a whack-a-mole game, and you'd end up with 4 or 5 or 6 different hardware and or software solutions that kind of made up, you know, the fabric of your security solution. And it needs to be more simple because staffing is an issue, budgets are an issue. I know a lot of institutions are starting to possibly consider dedicated cybersecurity staff, but that's not something that everybody can afford to do. Everybody on teams usually wears 10 or 12 different hats. So anywhere your solution can help pick up the slack, where you can have even someone as large as Google, you could never have the security, the redundancy, the pieces in your data center, you know, that Google has offering a cloud solution like this, just because of their sheer size and infrastructure. So why not take advantage of that? Ultimately, it's going to help your bottom line. It allows the few people that you do have in the IT department to really focus in and tackle issues that they need to tackle, and not be constantly putting out fires and worrying about integration between systems and security holes due to disparate systems and things like that. So getting everything in a single pane of glass, as they call it, is really the intention behind Plus and these changes in the Google Workspace for Education editions, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have our poll results up, Tom.
Yeah.
It looks like the audience is sharply divided between,
I'd say,
yes, we use Google Workspace for Education fundamentals at 44% of the audience, and no, but I'm here to learn more. So hopefully that will help.
That's great.
Direct you in the remaining of our conversation about Google for Education.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it looks like 9 or 10 people, a handful of people have some of these extended tools that we're going to be looking at today. So that's good to know as well. Well, to start off, and again, now that we've seen that almost half aren't using Workspace for Education at all yet, it's definitely very prevalent. There's over 170 million students and educators using Workspace for Education worldwide. The Google team and us decided to pull some of the local names you'll hopefully recognize. A few of these folks might be here in the room today, but obviously the list goes on between post-secondary higher ed, K-12, and a lot of private institutions as well, and some nonprofit institutions as well, using various versions of Workspace for Education. So, you know, from Michigan to Harvard to Brown to everybody in between, really leveraging, really leaning on this solution, on a cloud-based solution. It's not just about the cost savings to not have to have SANs and servers and all these pieces in your data center and worry about how you're shoring up and protecting the data. But there's also, you know, aside from the security, it's all the benefits of the ease of access, the anytime 24/7 access for your educators, for your users. And of course, the double-edged sword is making sure security is part of that conversation. But there's definitely a benefit to these tools. And as we go through them, we'll be talking a lot about the security tools, but we don't want to forget to look at even just where this all started, and that's the free version of Workspace for Education, as it's called. Its fundamentals is its new name as of February. That is a free solution for education, no matter what kind of education institution you are. Higher ed are definitely eligible to sign up for that. And for the last 9, 10 plus years, that's been a fantastic collaborative system. Arguably, I think Google was the first to the game, way ahead of anyone else, having collaborative documents in the cloud, 10 people working on the same document at the same time. And there is only one copy of that document. We're not dealing with email attachments being sent around to 15 different people, and now there's 15 different versions of that document on someone's C drive or USB flash drive out there. That creates data risks and things like that. Keeping things within the browser, keeping things within the cloud, allowing us to be device agnostic, grab any device, jump on the browser, get to the information we need, being able to collaborate in real time with hundreds of people at the same time has always been at the forefront of this solution. And that's was game changing back then, and is still reshaping education now as we speak, for sure. So a lot of these institutions really trusting that service, that suite, and really making it in a lot of cases the backbone of their point of instruction work. So let's take a look at the security and privacy commitments that Google has provided, and it really comes down to security by design. And that can mean a lot of different things, but from the way they're encrypting the data in transit and at rest to building Chrome OS, and Chromebooks from the ground up with security in mind. They're secured startup. All the modules are protected. They're checked on every startup for tampering, for malicious malware, for changes, to how they've designed the interface through the Chrome browser in order to provide that information to you, providing tools like two-step verification, USB security keys, everything in between. So always approaching it with security in mind as step one. Has always been the method that Google does these things. And that really shines through when we really start to look at the different layers of the solution here available to us. As I said, encrypted by default. So whether it's at rest on Google server farms, and when it's HTTPS in transit, obviously through the browser, encrypted, to using USB security keys to even be able to access your data. There's a lot of other two-step methods, but using a physical USB security key like the Google Titan key, or perhaps you've distributed security keys to your staff, YubiKeys or some other brand, all compatible with this solution. Oh, there we go, recording's back. I think we stopped there for a second, but we're good. Really being able to secure the access, because this isn't lab machines anymore. We're allowing people to access this solution from anywhere. And there's a lot of organizations out there that sometimes make it the requirement that all staff, not just IT staff, educators, instructors, professors, everyone has to have those levels of two-step authentication or verification to get into the system, or have to have these physical keys to get into the system as well. Your data is your own, and as silly as it sounds, that's important. We want to make sure our knee-jerk reaction isn't that this is the consumer Gmail and Google Drive that you may be used to on the personal side. This is, arguably nothing like that. The commitment to education, the privacy and support agreement with education is, this is your data. Google is not looking at it. They are not directing ads towards it. They are not using that data for any purposes unless you call support and initiate a problem, a support ticket, and request them to go look at an issue. They are not looking at your data. It is yours. It can be exported at any time if you want to take it out of the system. There's never any of those targeted ads. You, as the administrators of the Workspace for Education system, have all the keys. You are in full control to configure this the way you want, to prevent access the way you want. And Google's there as the facilitator. They're going to host it, they're going to provide the infrastructure, but it is your information and your data.
Hey, Tom.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, could I have an audience question?
Sure.
That's okay, real quick.
Yeah.
Nadeem had asked two questions actually. First is, will additional security tools be available for the Google Workspace for Education, the same tools that are available for the Plus version?
Okay, I think the question is, are the tools for Plus going to be available for the regular Workspace for Education?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think what we'll see if we get through the next few slides here,
Okay.
we'll take a look at the different editions, as they're called, that are available. There is inherent a lot of basics that I was mentioning, two-step verification and the way things are encrypted.
Right.
You know, all that's the standard stuff that comes with fundamentals with the free version. Today, we're going to be doing this deep dive on some of the paid editions, and most importantly, the Plus edition, which gives you all the options and all the additional features. These are enterprise grade features that were on the business side for the longest time with Google, and education. Yeah, started to request them, started to ask for them. A lot of them take a lot of horsepower and server pieces on the back end to provide. So cost effectiveness wise, there is a licensing fee for these additional versions for these editions that you can choose to move up to, or you can choose to stay with the fundamentals version. We're gonna go through those and discuss that.
Okay. Yeah. Second part of the question might be then probably to address as we get into it, which it sounds like his second part of his question will also be answered, is the operational price in the cloud has been an issue for the Google platform, and the Google platform seems to be more difficult to manage than AWS. So I'm sure as you get into it, you can address some of these questions too.
Yeah, and I see that question from Nadeem. Thanks for that. I think there's a little bit of crossover confusion there. I think your question revolves around Google Cloud Platform, virtualizing your servers, hosting servers in the cloud, and that would be, you know, the direct comparison to AWS. That's not what Google Workspace for Education is. Fundamentals is a free suite. You don't need to purchase any GCP licenses or space to do this. If you want to do some extra analytics on some of your Workspace for Education data, then you can spin up a GCP space and do some data warehousing and BigQuery pieces and things like that. But overall, GCP and AWS hosting is really a whole other topic, separate from the educational piece that we're looking at today. But Nadeem, if that's not answering your question, or you meant something else, let us know and we'll kick back around to it at the end and see if we can answer it better for you. Great. So as we said,
I'm sorry, real quick. We had mentioned Ken Matthews from Google is also attending today's presentation. Ken Matthews is a Google engineer, and the attendees can look in the chat because Ken is posting some information. So just wanted to let everybody know. Thanks.
That's great. Yep. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. He's got a great knowledge base article there that explains the features and compares them. So that's a great resource. So as the previous slide mentioned, compliance with a lot of standards here, from FERPA to COPA, everything in between. HIPAA compliance can be done with these tools as well. So Google's done their homework. They've looked through all that. They've made sure that the Workspace for Education, whether it's the free fundamentals or any of the paid versions over and above that, are going to be compliant with all these standards you see here. And again, it does come back to you owning the data, not Google. All right, we're at the next poll question here, Carl. Oh, I think you're muted, Carl.
Thank you very much. What is your biggest concern with privacy and security in your environment? Compliance with privacy standards, security over data at rest and in transit, accessing data and records for incident management and records requests. So attendees, if you could please participate in that poll question over the next 30 seconds. We'll post and see where everybody is. It's always interesting because IT security is such a struggle to, as we said, the resources are limited, the staffing, the expertise is limited, especially in higher ed and K through 12. So often, we can't provide the security and protection that we really should, and it just continues to grow in importance. So secure integrations with systems on campuses is important, because I'm sure that the Google for Education uses data from the institutions and campuses in it. How do you keep that student data safe, Tom?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are definite integration options. I'm sure a lot of folks out there are pretty reliant on Active Directory and things like that on network and on campus. There's synchronization tools to connect the Workspace for Education cloud with something like Active Directory in order to provision users, provision groups up to Google, and have some synergy there. And it makes management administration life a lot easier as well. There's only ever that pass of information in that one direction from your local Active Directory system out to Google's APIs securely to create users or create groups in Google. Nothing from Google comes back in the other direction to your on-premise systems. So there is that. And then really it just comes down to the aspect of a cloud system. You know, when we're using Google Drive, when we're using Gmail, the whole point is that there isn't anything on-premise. We don't have to worry about intrusions into your data center where you have the best security you can at least afford, or maybe not what you really should have. Everything's up in the cloud. It makes the collaboration easier, and it makes the security a lot easier as well. And we've got the results.
Yep. So we have our results. Looks like security over data and at rest and in transit is the biggest issue, followed by compliance with privacy standards. And there's so many, so much around compliance we have to deal with today. And accessing data and records for incident management is the third.
Okay. Yeah, and that's great. And I think if somebody wants more technical information, maybe even Ken can find some quick Google articles for us and throw them into the chat on the way Google encrypts their data at rest on the servers, and obviously in transit through SSL, HTTPS is going to be part of that as well. And it looks like he's already throwing that up for us. He's on the ball, so that's great. So if you really, if you want to nerd out and really go deep into that conversation, Google's got their white papers and their information on that kind of stuff. So, and I'm very interested to see that incident management, records requests, investigations, you know, in kind of third place there, but that's definitely can be an important part as well to this. The previous slide, we kind of just listed through all the privacy standards there that this is compliant with. So let's really quickly just cover the shift. Everyone's, as I said, intimately familiar with all the fun that we had last year, trying to navigate what to do next after March. There was this real, sudden need for better collaboration tools, for getting people connected to teach remotely. Video conferencing tools like Meet were suddenly at the top of everyone's list. Possibly better collaboration with productivity tools and things like that. If you weren't a Workspace for Education user and you were really reliant on local Microsoft Word and Excel files, or files that were on network shares within your network, we're suddenly faced with either punching a lot of VPN holes through firewalls to get people in from home to still get to those pieces of data and files, or possibly taking in and leveraging a cloud-based solution like Google. That really, ramped up quick. Google did a fantastic, phenomenal job of really stepping up last year. A lot of the tools and features around Google Meet that are to be part of some of these paid editions were offered to all education institutions for free last year in response to COVID up until the end of November, which was just a phenomenal thing, recognizing just that need, and things are going to fall apart if we don't provide the education that these students need. And they really stepped up and delivered that. So kudos to Google on that one. And as we said, security is top of mind for everyone, making sure that we're in compliance with a lot of those standards that we have to be in, those privacy standards that we have to meet. And whenever we can, using the technology to mitigate the risk and mitigate the chance of problems happening. People are people, and we can't always fix that, but education for those users and really leveraging and utilizing the tools at our disposal to mitigate those risks is important. Last year and the 2 years before that, we did have what was called Enterprise for Education. So like we said, That was a lot of the business side features that education was giving feedback to Google that, they would really like to see, they would like to have. In a lot of cases, they're just as big as a lot of companies with tens or hundreds of thousands of students and users. And Google released Enterprise for Education, which was a paid upgrade or a paid suite that you would put over top of your G Suite for Education. The one drawback there was it was just this one product, and you were purchasing all of it. And for a lot of educational institutions, they maybe found that wasn't really the choice and the flexibility that they wanted. Maybe they just really were interested in some of the Google Meet collaboration point of instruction tools. And then over here, there was some IT managers that were really just interested in some of the security features, but already used Zoom or already used something else and didn't really need a lot of the collaboration pieces. So this year, back in February, Google announced some changes, changing the namespace here from G Suite to Google Workspace for Education, and then coming up with multiple different additions to give schools the choice that they needed, giving you the flexibility, the ability to choose the one that fits best for you, whether that's financially or feature set wise, to hopefully meet your needs and empower you to really use the platform the way you need to use it. So just to kind of set the stage here, with this new terminology, we still have Workspace for Education fundamentals. That is really just a change in name. That is the same free suite of tools that education has had available to them for the last 10 plus years. And that's going to also continue to receive innovations and new features and new services. This isn't anything being stalled or stopped. Google is committed to ensuring that continues, and that will continue. So if these paid editions aren't in the cards for you right now, the Workspace for Education fundamentals is still going to progress forward, and there'll be tons and tons of new features and new options added to that yearly. And we live and breathe that every day here at Amplified IT, and I can definitely confirm that there's always lots of them, and we're always scrambling to keep up with them. And we do this all day long. So lots of opportunity there for that. And then, like we said, taking what was Enterprise for Education and breaking it down into 3 different options to give you those options, to give education the choices that they need. The first one is Workspace for Education Standard. Basically, think of that as the security center, as it's called, the suite of security tools, really the back office pieces that your IT administrators using the admin console would utilize around Gmail security, investigations, and records requests, and securing everyone's access to the tool set in a lot of different and effective ways. The next version available, as you can probably guess, is splitting out the point of instruction tools, or what they call the teaching and learning upgrade. So those are all the enhanced Meet features, and we're going to go through those in a minute real quick and take you through what's available there. Originality reports within Google Classroom, and a few other pieces there for the teaching and learning upgrade. So that's an option for you solely to purchase as well. And then what we're really going to focus on today, just because it's all encompassing, is Workspace for Education Plus. And that is all features put together, as well as a handful of features that are only available in Plus. And that is the direct replacement for the previous Enterprise for Education. If you're familiar with that, I know 8 or 9 folks on the call today said that they did have that existing legacy suite. So this is that under its new name. But again, compared to standard and teaching and learning, there are a few plus only features as well. This could be the same link that Ken shared with you a few moments ago, but that compare editions link down here at the bottom is a really great site that will just take you through in a nice kind of matrix chart what exactly comes with each version. So if you want to jump down to Gmail pieces, if you want to jump to Google Meet pieces, or anything in between, you can look at that chart to really help navigate what's right for you, or give us a call, and our account managers sit down with schools every day and really take them through what would make the most sense and help navigate these options. So let's take a look. As I said, we're going to focus on Plus. A lot of the stuff we're going to be looking at would come potentially with the Workspace for Education Standard Edition, but we're going to just focus on Plus because that does come with everything. So everything we're going to work through here for sure comes with the Plus version. And when it comes to secure collaboration, like we said, with everything that happened last year, that need to be outside of our campus walls and still have everyone operate, hopefully per normal, as they'd expect to do, requires a lot of collaboration tools. That's going to really focus on a lot of the Google Meet features, having those video conferences, knowing who's in those meetings, knowing who's in those classes, getting things like attendance reports, being able to record, wonderful stuff like that. And then on the other side of the house, having those security features and analytics that the IT folks need and want on the back end to be able to control access to services, depending on certain criteria, be proactive around security threats, be able to utilize additional tools that Google's going to provide in something like Education Plus to hopefully stave off those phishing, those ransomware attacks before they even get started. So we're not so reliant on end user education, which we know kind of suffers a lot and isn't where it should be. So let's go through those. We'll take a look at the collaboration tools. So in using something like Google Meet with the Plus version, you're going to get things like the boxes mentioned here on the right, everything from larger meetings up to 250 people per Google Meet. That could be a department meeting. That could be your actual instructional class being taught by a professor or instructor. There's also an option there for live streams up to 100,000 viewers. So not having to jump to something a little more public and unsupported as YouTube, being able to keep it within your supported core services within Workspace for Education, doing a live stream with Google Meet that up to 100,000 people can view. That would be great to address the student body, lots of other sporting events, anything else going on could be done that way. Permanent recording is a piece of this. So being able to record any Google Meet session as an MP4 into Google Drive, and that can be kept indefinitely and permanently. And a great new feature that will, after a recording has finished or after a meet has finished, transcribe automatically all the audio within that Google Meet session into a transcription log. And everyone with Android phones and using everything else in Google's ecosystem knows how good their speech to text and text to speech is. Real high accuracy in those transcriptions that work really great. Other features that come with Plus and with these enhanced Meet features, Q&A modules in Google Meet, polling, similar to the polling we're doing with you today, some real high-end enhanced noise cancellation that seems to just be magic, the way it can take out everything else in the room other than a person's voice. Your instructors, your professors being able to receive an attendance report immediately after a class is over, and breakout rooms. And I'm sure you've experienced some form of breakout room on someone's platform out there, exactly what you think, being able to selectively divide up your class of students into breakout groups to work on projects, having it be randomly distributed, being able to end the breakout session and bring everyone back together is a real key feature and something that educators last year absolutely had to have, and Google was quick to the mark to get that rolled out. Some slides here just showing some of these features. I actually just kind of talked through them all, so we won't spend too much time on each of these slides. But again, through Google Calendar and Meet, scheduling those live streams up to 100,000 people or those larger meetings, just by default can have up to 250 participants. That'd be participants with camera and microphone. If you wanted to have that, that'd be a ton of people. Hopefully everybody mutes when you do that and has some good etiquette. Breakout rooms, a great animation here of what breakout rooms can look like, whether they're randomly distributed or whether the instructor drags and drops and moves the people into the rooms. How many rooms do you want? Do you want to send a timer? Do you want it to be randomly shuffled, etc.? The recordings and the transcripts, as we said, the Meet recordings go straight to the Google Drive of the person who is the moderator, the initiator, the creator of the Google Meet. So if the instructor or the professor created the Meet, the recording is going to end up in their Google Drive. It's integrated into Google Classroom. It's deeply integrated into Google Calendar. If you were part of that Google Meet session and invited to it through Google Calendar within your organization, you're going to automatically have access to the recording without any permissions needing to be set. And those MP4s can be downloaded right out of Google Drive if you want to take them out of the system and possibly do something else with them or store them somewhere else. That's an option as well. And there's a great snapshot of the attendance reports, basically a CSV, a spreadsheet file Google Sheet file gets emailed to the Meet owner at the end with a report on the attendees and their average time spent in the Meet in case people were bouncing in and out and things like that. So can be a valuable report to make sure attendees are showing up where they need to. So security and insights is the next piece. And really this is where I think we've seen a kind of an interesting change back, upwards of 2 years ago with these enhanced features with Enterprise for Education. There was a real security focus, and some of the collaboration, some of the Google Meet pieces were a bit secondary. Of course, last year with the pandemic, kind of flipped that on its head. Now there's a lot of educational institutions that take a look at this first and foremost for those Meet and collaboration features. And then they're pleasantly surprised to find out that there's also a lot of security that they're going to gain from that as well. One of the pieces with Plus that you do gain is a Workspace migrate tool at your disposal. This is actually a tool where you can migrate data from perhaps an on-premise Microsoft Exchange environment. Calendars, contacts, mail can be migrated up to the cloud, up to Google Calendar, Gmail, etc. There's an ability to migrate various pieces of SharePoint or perhaps Box, which we know a lot of higher ed institutions were using Box, and then now there's some financial aspects to consider with that and are looking to maybe move. Maybe you have on-premise file servers, Windows file servers and things like that, or possibly some disparate Google Workspace domains from different departments, and you're looking to consolidate all into one Workspace domain, can be done with that as well. Data regions is a wonderful feature. So what this really boils down to is if you have a need or a want to ensure that all of your core data is kept within US data center servers in Google's ecosystem, then that's what this feature allows you to do. So given Workspace for Education Plus, you can pick a subset of users, you can pick all users, and basically the core application data, think Gmail, Calendar, Drive, Contacts, etc., are slowly in the background going to be migrated over the course of a few hours or a few days once this is selected. And then going forward will continue to be only stored and reside on US-based data centers. Obviously, there's an option here for UK data centers as well. I'm not sure if that's appropriate for anyone in the audience, but guaranteed the US one is going to be something that catches people's attention. So if you feel you have a need due to some of the government contracts that you have or the type of work your students and instructors do, that is going to be an option for you to choose that. There's a great feature called dynamic groups, and this really just makes life easy for the administrators. Rather than having to reinvent the wheel, we can really create functional dynamic Google groups. And a Google group, since a lot of the audience isn't familiar using the suite right now, is what you think for a group. It can be used in multiple places as an email distribution list, inviting folks to a calendar event, setting permissions on a file in Google Drive for sharing or in a shared drive, and the list goes on and on and on. Being able to create those groups dynamically using attributes, using some of the attributes we have here in the Workspace for Education system that we can propagate for users, like their location, what organizational unit they live in, some relational pieces as well. And then it's going to, in the background, maintain and update those groups dynamically and make sure as tomorrow a new user gets added into Workspace for Education, they're automatically going to be members of those relevant groups, given those attributes and those pieces. Security Sandbox is a key one, I think, given the conversations we were having earlier. So when we talk about phishing, when we talk probably more importantly about the ransomware, a lot of times ransomware starts with an attachment. There is a hidden program, there is something malicious in that attachment that is then going to go and try to encrypt your data. Where Security Sandbox comes into play, very simple feature to turn on from Plus, but as emails come in for the users you enable this for, it's going to take their incoming email that has attachments and take it over to a virtual space, almost like a bomb squad. It's going to open that attachment and it's going to execute it in a virtual environment to see what that attachment actually is, regardless of what renamed extension might be on it. People try to play a lot of tricks. Turns out it's actually an EXE or something like that. It's going to get executed, and basically a 0-day threat that would be unknown to your antivirus software or whatever other tools you're using would be exposed by this execution. It would be identified that it's doing malicious pieces to this virtual machine, and your end user, your professor, your staff member is never going to receive that email. Google is going to deal with that. They're going to quarantine it. They're going to take their actions. So that's a really powerful feature in that fight against ransomware and pieces like that. I think another piece, arguably, to mention real quick is that whether it's even just fundamentals, Workspace for Education fundamentals, the act of having a system here in the cloud immediately makes us less susceptible to something like ransomware. Ransomware does its job when it gets on your C drive, or more importantly, finds those mapped drive letters in Windows Explorer on your computer, let's say, to your network file servers, that are in your data center. And then it encrypts everything in that staff drive or everything in that financial shared drive on the network because there was an access path through your workstation. Google Drive is in the cloud. Google Drive is accessed through your browser. If I were to get a malicious attachment on my machine, on my Windows laptop, and mistakenly execute it, by nature, it has no way to get to my Google Drive, to our shared drives, and infect those files because they're not on my C drive. There is no mapped drive letter. Now, there's a tool to map drive letters if you want to do that, but by default, natively, there is no direct way to access those files and for that malicious tool to encrypt them with a key. It just falls outside of what that tool is looking for and creates that instant barrier. So I think that sets you up in a good place already. And then something like this is just the icing on the cake for sure, that we're going to inspect and execute any of those attachments that come in for users. Analytics is important, as we mentioned. There's all sorts of logs and data in the admin console for Workspace for Education. It can be digested there. Some of it can be exported, but given plus, there's an ability to fire up an instance of Google BigQuery in GCP, and that is a data warehouse-like solution where we can constantly be exporting all of our Workspace for Education reports and log files to BigQuery. Normally, in Workspace for Education, all of those are only kept for 180 days. By doing this, we can keep them longitudinally for as long as we want, years and years. We can go back and look at adoption and usage trends. We could go back and see who made a change to a setting 7 or 8 or 9 months ago in the admin console if we're suddenly realizing a problem. All that would be at our disposal. And then lots of great ways with Data Studio and things like that to visualize it, to have graphs, to have dashboards for folks in your IT department to monitor that. Lots of great ability there. One of the main pieces when it comes to that analytics and insights and leveraging those logs and reports that are there is the security dashboard and the investigation tool. And we're going to take a look at that in a second here. That's going to allow you, as you can kind of see here with the representation on the screen, to see those trends, to see that sudden peak in incoming phishing, in user-identified phishing emails, in drive sharing externally to the world suddenly peaks yesterday. What happened? Was that a data breach? Is someone sharing something they shouldn't? Why did 5,000 people look at that Google Doc or that file? So there's a lot of great pieces on that dashboard to identify those trends and then be able to look further and take action. The real hero to all that is the investigation tool. That'll be part of the demonstration here coming up real quick, where we'll show you that and how that investigation tool really allows you to get the whole story, to really see what's happening, take some proactive actions, really remediate the issue, and then possibly kick in some pieces to have some ongoing proactive prevention of that going forward as well. So the investigation tool is going to be a key piece of those analytics and insights. The investigation tool, for a quick list here, and we'll see it in a second in a little video we're going to play just for time constraints. You pick one of your sources, whether that's the Drive logs, the Gmail logs, chat logs, a lot of other pieces around users and devices. Then there's a whole list of conditions, of criteria that we can set. I want to know when someone uploaded a file to Google Drive, when they viewed it, when they printed it, when an email was received. Did an email include an attachment? Was there a link in an email? Did the link get clicked? All those pieces can be sorted through and searched on. We can stack our searches on top of each other to really build the whole story and start to get the full picture of what happened, what is happening, where's the breach, what do we need to do to close the hole, what do we need to do to remediate this and prevent it going forward. So that's a bit of a glimpse into the investigation tool. We're going to walk you through this demo here real quick. So I'll get this started here, and I'm just going to make sure this is full screen for everyone. So this is the Workspace for Education admin console. If we go down to the security menu, one of the pieces we get along with everything else security-wise in the security center is the dashboard, the security dashboard. So we're going to open that up here real quick. You can see I've made this nice and super large, but we have all of these widgets or tiles here that are available to us. We can rearrange these in whatever ways we want to see them. We can go anywhere from 7 days to 180 days. And again, we can look for those trends. We can look for those spikes in the data that are going to lead us to viewing that report, going further, and possibly launching an investigation. So everything from OAuth requests for Google services to be accessed by third parties, to spam, to drive sharing, and a lot of things in between. Here's our incoming spam filter. We can see a lot of different emails being classified as spam. And if we needed to, there's a quick button here to the investigation tool. That's going to launch the investigation tool in a new tab. It's going to pre-populate all that criteria from the report, so we don't even have to do that. And then we could hit the search and look into that further. I'm going to close that. We're going to go back here and we're going to actually just open up a empty investigation tool. Perhaps today we just wanted to do our weekly search for particularly interesting emails having to do with possible phishing attempts for passwords and things like that that might have gotten through. So we can do a Gmail log search where the subject contains the word password. And we're going to run that search here in the investigation tool. It's going to take a matter of seconds, come back with results here. We can see some different emails here. And as we go down the list of incoming emails, we see some here at the bottom that look like they're from the IT department, but we know we didn't send those. And we can see here that our friend Bill Smith was the recipient of these. We can see what IP address he was on when he opened those. Maybe he was at home and not on campus. Lots of different columns of information there at our disposal. And if we go back to Bill, we can see he's received the message, he's opened it, and he's clicked on a link. So now we want to see what this email is. We can bring up all the details in the header. We can put in our justification for the logs of why we're opening someone's email here. And then we actually get to see the full HTML email message. And we see that there is a link asking Bill to change his password, which is not legitimate. And we know from the investigation tool logs behind us that he did click on that link. So most likely, you know, this superintendent or professor has compromised credentials now. He's probably put his login and password Bill has into some website thinking he's changing his Workspace password, and it's been captured by some bad actors. We could click on Bill's name here. One of the powerful features of the investigation tool is the ability to pivot on a piece of information. So we can pivot on Bill being the recipient, and we can go see now in a Gmail live messages search, everything else that might be in Bill's mailbox that contains the word password, because Bill seems to be pretty susceptible to these things. So right now, this minute, what emails are in Bill's mailbox that contain the word password in them? And we can see here lots of other attempts, not just the one we found, but lots of other ones. If we want to now, before Bill has a chance to click on these and make the situation worse, we can select hundreds or thousands of emails, delete them here with one click straight out of everyone's mailbox, move them to quarantine. So being able to do things in bulk is the real claim to fame for this tool for sure. We can take those remediation steps in bulk. Now, if we add a new search here, maybe we want to look at something in Google Drive, we can pick Drive log events. And just to do something really simple, we could see where the event is upload, and you can see all the options for Drive here on the list. And the file type or document type is MP4. So we're looking for those abusers that are maybe using unlimited Google Drive for their own little personal movies, TV shows, you know, personal torrent with their friends. We see probably a copyrighted movie here. This shady person, Tom, here has uploaded. So that's interesting to see. And maybe now we'd want to pivot and say, well, sorry, we could take some actions. We could change the sharing permission, add ourselves so we could see this document or file, make ourselves the owner, remove people from the sharing list, disable download, print, copy, all that wonderful stuff. In this investigation, we're now a little bit curious about this user. We could pivot on Tom being the user and drive log events where Tom's the actor in the event in the log and say, okay, well, what else has Tom uploaded to Google Drive? So let's just take a look at the event is upload, everything Tom has uploaded to Drive. And now we're really going to get an insight into what's going on. We see some network hacking tools and some pieces here where we're certainly wanting to investigate this a little further and go speak to this person or raise an issue with campus security or whatever we need to do. So in a quick few seconds there, we were really able to highlight some important information and really drill in really deep there. How do we be proactive? If we go back to our search we were doing on emails that contain the word password in the subject, we can make a rule. And if we make this rule, because we don't want to come in here every week, Carl and I don't have time to run a search every week and look for this. We're going to bring this in where the email has been received and the subject contains the word password. And then we're going to go to the next step in this rule. And there's a little preview chart here. We don't have to worry about it. Just shows you the current trend of that criteria. And we can say every hour, look for these emails. And if you find them, let's stick the Google robot on it. And it's going to automatically maybe delete these messages. Or if we're a little bit worried they might be legitimate, we can send them to a quarantine. Or every day, someone on the IT team goes through that quarantine. We can send it to the Google Alert Center here in the admin console. We could send notification emails to administrators. This rule is going to proactively run in the background every hour and possibly delete or quarantine these kind of emails. So not only can we use the investigation tool to find what has happened and try to mitigate or remediate, we can use a rule like that going forward to proactively just stop those from happening, stop people from mistakenly clicking. We can see here in the rules list, that rule we just created. We can go back and run the investigation tool on its criteria, but that's where the active rule would be to do that. So we'll go back here to the slide deck. Hopefully that gives you again, we could spend hours showing you all the different pieces you could do with tools like that, but a couple quick real world examples of where that kind of process starts in the investigation tool, possibly the dashboard tiles, or just doing some weekly checks of who's uploading what, looking for abusers, looking for copyright infringement, anything that is your responsibility to do your due diligence on, for sure. Oops, wrong click. So we'll get back here now that I've clicked on the wrong thing, and we'll get back into this. There we go. So just to finish up, and we'll make sure we tackle, I think there's definitely a few questions I saw flying through the chat here. We've got here with Workspace for Education Plus, a learning environment. Obviously that's reliable. We know Google's got the server farms, they've got the fault tolerance, the reliability, the redundancy. If there was a power outage on the East Coast, you're going to ask for your email or your Google document, and it's going to be assembled, you know, given all the pieces that Google distributes and replicates around all of their other data center servers. And given data regions, that could be solely in the United States if you need it to be as well. So that reliability, that secureness, the data being encrypted at rest, like we said, the SSL access of that data gives you that stable environment, the built-in protections. We just looked through a lot of the analytics and insights as well, whether that's the investigation tool or even using BigQuery to track your usage and adoption and issues over time are all part of that reliable, secure system. And Carl, we got one more poll question.
Yes, that sounds good. So if the attendees could please take a quick poll quickly. It's our last one. What feature would be most attractive to you from EDU Plus? The investigation tool, security dashboard, enhanced meet features, data regions. So we covered a lot here today in these tools, and you know, you took a deep dive in a couple investigations. I know as Tom, as a CIO, I've had to conduct a few of those in my institutions, And, can you just speak to, as far as using these tools day to day for an institution, since there are limited resources and staffing, definitely you address the fact that this takes the burden off of the on-premise systems because it's cloud-based. But as far as practice, daily practice of using it, can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've definitely seen a lot of IT departments at institutions, once these tools are available to them and they're at their disposal, definitely, try to put some ownership to them, whether that's a dedicated person who's going to monitor that security dashboard, look at that data over time, watch for those peaks and trends. When we saw the automatic rules being created there, that's really another way to take the burden off the shoulders. Once you've digested enough of the data and you've had some time with these tools to decide what's important to you or what seems to continually be showing up in the data and happening, how can we combat that? Creating some of those automated rules to deal with it allows your staff and yourself to go focus on other things, because we know those automatic rules are going to be taking automatic actions. We've had some institutions have some phishing problems. We've had some of them have just reply all storm problems with groups where students and people are just sending millions of emails with reply all storms, and tools like that investigation tool can delete millions of emails if you needed to with a couple clicks. And obviously that isn't going to happen in a few minutes. But if you let that sit there and grind away at it, it can do it. And we've worked with some institutions to address problems like that. So yeah, I think it's a matter of we still need to dedicate the attention and some staff time to making sure when we have someone purchase these tools through us here at Amplified IT, we have a lot of great service where we have onboarding, we have a lot of material and resources for you to train your team up on what all of these features and tools you now have acquired do. We have weekly, monthly webinars on these tools, and we make sure even just during a trial that you're well supported. You have someone to ask questions to and make sure that you're engaged with the tool. Nothing's worse in education, and it happens too much in the past, on spending money on hardware or software and tools, and then they sit on the shelf and they don't get properly utilized, right? And no one wants to see that, especially with the reducing budgets as we're all experiencing.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. So thanks for that answer. So here's our poll. What feature is most attractive? Looks like a lot of folks like that investigation tool. I do too. Yeah. It's very user-friendly. You can really target an incident and really mitigate with this tool. And then the enhanced meet features, that's also a big one.
It's up there, yeah.
Collaboration. But the security dashboard is good too, right? Because you can use that for reporting and kind of benchmarking where you're at and kind of monitor your progress with your IT security practices.
Yeah, it's intentionally very visual, right? No one likes to sift through rows and rows of spreadsheet data. If you can help it, having all those graphs on that dashboard makes life a lot easier for sure.
Great.
Great. The last thing we want to mention, I appreciate we're a little bit over time here, so thanks for everyone that hung in there, or if you're back afterwards watching the recording, thanks for that. The next step really for you, if this is of interest to you, there is a free trial available. So you can receive 50 licenses. So those licenses can be assigned to whatever staff that you need to assign them to properly test this, whether that be an entire department or people across departments. And that is a trial of Workspace for Education Plus for 60 days. And if needed, there can be an extension to that. You can follow the link here on the page to get a trial through us. And like I said, here at Amplified IT, even with just the free trial, we're here to support you. We've got a whole bunch of resources. We basically do a managed trial with you where we're going to spend a lot of time getting you onboarded into that trial, make sure you understand what you have with these security tools, what you have with the collaboration tools as you go through the trial. And then we're going to continually touch base with you during that 60 days to make sure you're getting everything you need, to make sure you have your questions answered. So we're there throughout the whole process, even with the trial, to make sure that that's successful for you. So we'd encourage you to follow that link, and there's a quick form there to fill out, and then we'll reach out to you with more information on that to get that trial started. few extra resources here just to give you at the end. There's some great ones here. The Getting Started Guide for Workspace paid editions. That's really just going to, again, walk you through, similar to today, what all 3 of those paid editions over and above fundamentals do and have as far as features and what would make sense for you. The 30+ ways to use Workspace for education, paid editions, that's a slide deck there that if you liked those slides we kind of went through with the meat features and things like that with the nice animated GIFs, that is all of them and more there in that slide deck. So if you need to take that to some decision makers or stakeholders, the GIFs there really kind of give you a real quick idea of what that feature is. It's a great way to work through it and look at some of those features a little more visually. And again, here at Amplified IT, we're big on engagement. That is our bread and butter, is having those deep engagements with schools and with institutions in education. So we will sit down, our account reps, and even bringing in the Google rep from the Google team as well, if necessary, and we'll sit down with you and help navigate and map out where you need to go. And if one of these paid editions is going to make sense for you going forward, we'll work with you on that.
All right, Tom.
Okay.
Very interesting. Great overview. Like the deep dive, and it looks like there is something for everybody here. We had answered several questions in the chat as we were kind of going through, and thanks to Ken Matthews for answering questions.
Yes.
And he continues to do that in the chat. So we're going to try to post those questions separately when we post this presentation and the recording to all the attendees. And again, there is that bit.ly URL that's in the chat for folks to access that. If they have any questions, they can certainly reach out to Google for Education, to Amplified IT, and Campus Consortium, of course, is always happy to find more information for you or ask the questions if you need more information about this platform. So I really want to thank Google for Education, want to thank Amplified IT for sponsoring and presenting this information to our members and to the many other people that attended. We had over 160 institutions register for this presentation today. So obviously there's a great deal of interest in moving campuses to the ability to perform in the area of online learning and mobile workforce better than they have before. And so many institutions are struggling and really do need an enterprise solution at affordable prices. Certainly this seems to have that offering, and to find out more, we can certainly follow up with you. And again, any questions, I'd like to thank very much the audience, all the attendees, all the schools and organizations and businesses that attended today. Much appreciated. And this information will be posted to the Campus Consortium website. And please do follow up with us at Campus Consortium if you do have any other requests for information. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks, Carl. That was great.
Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.